Do not disturb, knock softly. I found the first lie folded into our laundry, thin as a credit card, heavy as a verdict. It was a hotel key, dull gold with Mariner House stamped on one side and 417 on the sticker. I held it the way you hold a photograph of yourself you don't recognize. My wife, Leela, doesn't travel for work. She builds it. She's an architect who can point at corners of the city and say, softly, I asked for that line to stay honest. On good days, I believed her buildings were apologies to the sky for everything we put under it. On bad days like this one, I believed less. I set the key on the washer and watched it not explain itself. The dryer hummed on, a big warm animal, while Leela showered in the hallway bathroom with the door cracked 3 inches, enough for steam to move like a rumor. I didn't look through the gap. I'm not proud of how much self-control felt like a trick I was teaching myself too late. We'd been married 8 years. Those last 2 had grown quiet in ways we kept calling busy. I work as a sound mixer for commercials, 30-second bursts of need dressed as stories. I spend my days locating the hum that doesn't belong. The skill is less romantic at home. Did you wash my blue blouse? Leela called over the water. Yeah, I said, sliding the key into my pocket the way a magician palms a coin. It's in the basket. Life continued. We oversalted the eggs. She left her coffee in the microwave again. I pressed my palm to her hip in passing and felt her inhale the way a person does when they're deciding whether to turn toward or away from touch. She chose neutral ground, the cupboard for a thermos. The steam from her hair curled like something that wished it were smoke. You okay? She asked, which is a question that can mean anything from I love you to I can't do this anymore. Yeah, I said, you. Her smile was the polite version. Meeting runs late, don't wait up. Mariner House was 12 minutes from our apartment if the lights cooperated. I told myself I was going to return a lost object. It's astonishing how moral the mind becomes when it's prepping to betray someone. The lobby was clean and modest, like money that grew up pretending not to be money. I could have handed the key to the receptionist and left, a responsible stranger with good posture. Instead, I said I'd like a duplicate made, please. The clerk looked at me with the neutral friendliness people put on when they suspect something and can't prove it. I returned the original and pocketed the copy, and nothing in the world exploded, which felt both like a relief and an accusation. Room 417 smelled like citrus cleaner and someone else's sleep. The bed was made the way soldiers might approve. I stood with my hands in my pockets like a tourist in a church. There were 2 wine glasses turned mouth down on the desk, their thin stems cross-legged, waiting. I went to the window and learned that you can look at your own city through a rectangular hole and see it as if you didn't live there. When I turned back, I saw the thing I had come for without admitting it to myself, a bobby pin on the carpet near the desk chair. Leela's hair is short now, the practical kind that sits like a decision. The pin wasn't hers. I picked it up and felt ridiculous for touching it with care. I could feel my heart trying to be unoriginal. It chose the oldest rhythm in the world. You're losing something. I didn't announce my discovery that night. When Leela came home, she was bright in the way light bulbs are in stores. Showy, for strangers. She showered again and lay in bed scrolling through something that made her mouth quirk every 15 seconds. I watched the outline of her face and reminded myself of the first time I'd seen it, her leaning over a drafting table at a party, ignoring the party. She had ink on her thumb and a stubborn curl near her temple, and I'd said something about the curl as if I were brave. She laughed, and I'd pretended that sound belonged to me. The next afternoon, our neighbor texted to ask if her packages were stacked against our door again. Our neighbor is named Serena. She runs a tiny pastry shop at street level called Butter and Myth and moves like a secret that enjoys being shared. We're not close, but she knows our coffee preferences, and I know the names of her 3 plants because she talks to them on the landing. When I carried her parcels across the hall, she peered around the door frame with flour at her cheekbone. "You look like someone who solved a puzzle and doesn't like the picture," she said. "I found a key," I said before I could stop myself. "Does the key open a door or a story?" "Both," I admitted, surprising us. Serena leaned her shoulder against the jamb and tilted her head, the universal sign for "I'm here if you want to lay the world down." The smell from her apartment was vanilla and heat, butter deciding to be something. Behind her, a record player whispered an old jazz horn into the air, the kind of sound that makes you forgive the present. "Come in," she said softly. "I have almond croissants and a dangerous amount of empathy." I did not go in. There are thresholds you bow to long before you cross, but I laughed, which helped. On my way back to my door, she called out, "Hey, whatever it is, you don't have to carry it without witnesses." It was a generous sentence. Generous sentences do damage. They crack you open where you thought you'd calcified. I went to the studio. I made a man's voice warmer and a refrigerator quieter. I ate an apple at my desk and tasted nothing. At dusk, I walked to Mariner House again with the copy key burning a pocket-shaped heat over my thigh the whole way. Room 417 looked exactly as it had and completely changed. The bed unmade now, the type of disarray people call tousled when they're being kind. 2 glasses used. 1 lipstick ghost, coral, on a napkin that had been folded under one. A small square of receipt paper balled that opened to reveal the word L, a heart, and a time. 9:45. The name Leela has an L the way a door has a hinge. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the carpet until I could hear the air conditioner argue with itself. I did not cry, which I mention only because not crying is a kind of performance men get praised for without asking. I lay back and looked at the ceiling and thought about how many ceilings had seen this exact scene. One person realizing, the other not here to hold it. I left the room the way you leave a church when you remember you don't believe properly. At home, the hall smelled like sugar. Serena's door was propped with a cookbook. "Taste tester," she said, wiggling a pastry bag at me like a white flag. "I'm not fit for human company." "Great," she said. "I prefer new species." She handed me a still warm tart glazed in something that caught the light like small rain. I bit. Lemon. A kiss that's learned restraint. When her fingers brushed mine, the contact zipped up my arm with embarrassing honesty. I did not pull my hand away. She saw everything I didn't say and didn't punish me for it. "Sometimes the smell tells the story and the taste tells the truth," she murmured. "You can bring the plate back tomorrow, or never. I have more." I carried the tart into the apartment like it were evidence that kindness might still exist. Leela was at the dining table, laptop open to a drawing like a city learning how to be gentle. She didn't look up. "You were late," she said. "Work," I answered. It was part truth. It tasted like the rind, not the fruit. She clicked. "I'll be at the site all weekend. They moved the inspection." "I could come by," I said, which was a test. The best way to hear the truth is to offer an obvious chance to lie. "Don't," she said too quickly. "It'll be dust and swearing. I'll be home late." That night I dreamed about doors. Some were locked. Some opened onto rooms I had never seen, with windows into places I knew well. In one, a woman sat cross-legged on a hotel bed and put her hair up with a bobby pin, and I woke in the dark with the taste of lemon still in my mouth like hope that had been polite enough to wait for me. Saturday I held my life like a tray. I went to the farmer's market. I bought greens as if they were a defense against something you can't eat your way out of. Serena stood at her stall selling small galaxies of fruit and cream, joking with customers in a voice that made people stand better. When she saw me, she touched the edge of her crate, little knock. I'm here. I bought a tart I didn't need just to have a reason to fold my hand around the brown bag she slid toward me. Would you like me to say the obvious thing? She asked in a low voice. What's that? You're not crazy. What if I am? I said and liked that she didn't laugh. Then at least you're crazy has excellent taste in tarts. We grinned at the ground like co-conspirators whispering compliments to the sidewalk. Her eyes held mine one heartbeat too long, and the day moved a click closer to something I had been pretending not to watch. The choice arrived on Sunday night, wearing Leela's shirt and another woman's perfume. She came in late and wrong, eyes overbright and cheeks warmed by someone else's compliments. I stood in the kitchen with the hotel key on my palm. We looked at it together like it was an insect neither of us wanted to kill but neither would pick up. She didn't try to lie, I'll give her that. She sat. The chair made a sound like a sigh and she pressed her lips together and told me a version of the story with careful omissions. If a confession is a house, hers had too many doors bricked over. There was a client. There was a chemistry that didn't feel like a crime until it did. There was a room that made it feel like the world couldn't find them. I don't know how I got there, she said at the end, and I believed parts of that. What do you want now? I asked. I want everything not to break. She looked small then, like the first time I saw her, before the buildings and the budgets, before she learned to take the air out of rooms without leaving a mark. Can we recalibrate? Are you asking for permission or forgiveness? Both, she whispered. Then we need truth, I said, and my voice surprised me with how steady it was. All of it, not we'll talk later truth, now truth. Silence spread, clean and brutal. She stared at her hands as if the story were written there, but the palms stayed blank. When she met my eyes, I saw a woman I knew and a woman I didn't, occupying the same seat like two mismatched cushions trying to be a chair. I'm sorry, she said. It wasn't enough. It never is. But it was also something, and I allowed it its smallness. I'm stepping back, I said. From the we, I can't be the ghost in this marriage. Is there someone else? She asked quickly, as if nomming a rival would tidy the mess. No, I said, and then because honesty had decided to live here now, there could be. Who? It doesn't matter if nothing happens, I said. What matters is that something could. She nodded. She stood. That night she slept on the couch with the elegance of a person doing the right thing 1 hour too late. The days after moved both fast and politely. We drafted a schedule for the apartment like diplomats dividing a city. I told no one. I answered Mark's texts with emojis that disguised. I worked. I walked ridiculous distances after dark, like the city contained a mile that could rearrange my brain if I found it. I kept not knocking on Serena's door. Serena knocked on mine. 3 soft raps in a rhythm the world uses to say it means well. I opened to her holding 2 mugs of tea and a look I had only seen a few times. A look that lets you choose without pressure. Roof, she said. Our building's roof is the secret everyone's allowed to know. There's a faded picnic table, a line of mismatched chairs, and a view that makes the river look like a bright snake slipping under the bridges. We carried the mugs to the parapet and stood without pretending to admire the skyline. Wind lifted the hair against Serena's neck, and I had to put my hands in my pockets to stop them from choosing for me. I'm not a solution, she said gently. I don't want one, I answered. I want a witness. I can do that, she said. and the way she said it felt like the first time a teacher writes your name on the board and doesn't mispronounce it. We talked, not about Leela, not exactly. We talked about sound, how silence isn't the same as quiet. She told me about do, how you can feel a day's weather in its mood. I admitted that sometimes I pretend I'm balancing the world when I slide a fader up. We didn't move closer. We let the air do its job. When we did step toward each other, it felt like an answer to a question neither of us had been brave enough to ask out loud. She placed her hand just above my heart without touching, the way a person warms their fingers near a candle. I lifted my palm and mirrored her, our hands hovering as if we were blessing each other. The distance there, the almost, lit my skin like a slow match. "This is stillness," she whispered, "and somehow it feels like motion." "Don't kiss me," I said, and heard the plea inside it. "I won't," she answered, and her eyes promised that not kissing can be as intimate as the rest. We stood like that until the tea cooled and the city changed its color palette twice. When we finally hugged, it was the kind that lands between the shoulder blades and tells the bones they're not alone. Her cheek slid against mine for 1 second, and the heat of it poured down my spine like a clean pour of something I didn't need to name. I slept the best I had in months. Leela and I talked the next evening at the dining table, two diplomats of a border both sides claim. We divided furniture the way people auction off memories. We agreed on a timeline that protected our softer things. We didn't touch. When she left to stay with a friend downtown, she paused at the door and looked at me with a sadness that didn't ask for anything. "You were my home," she said. "You were mine," I answered. Truth doesn't always comfort. Sometimes it just stands beside you and refuses to leave. I took the copy key to Mariner House and left it at the front desk with a note that said, "I won't need this anymore." The man behind the counter nodded like he had witnessed 1,000 such small ceremonies. Out on the sidewalk, the wind smelled like rain and bakery sugar. I walked home with my hands open at my sides, as if I were ready to catch something even if I didn't know its weight. When I reached our floor, Serena's door was half open, a spill of piano from inside like warm light. I didn't step through. I leaned in the frame and said her name, just that, and she turned toward me with a smile that was not a rescue, not a solution, not a secret. It was an honest invitation to share air. "We can go back to the roof," she said. "Or we can dance in your kitchen for one song," I answered, surprising us both. "Bare feet," she decided, already grinning. We moved slowly on tile that had learned every spilled sugar of her days. The song was old and forgiving. Her fingers slid into my palm like a key for a lock I hadn't known I was carrying in my chest. Our bodies found a distance that may as well have been touch for how thoroughly it occupied us. When she laid her head against me near the end of the track, my breath stuttered and settled like a bird that had decided the branch would hold. We didn't kiss. Not that night. We didn't need to. There are rooms in a person that open only for patience. There are doors you knock on softly because the person on the other side is learning to be brave again. Back in my apartment, I stripped the bed and washed the sheets and opened every window. The city entered in big, unashamed lungs. I stood by the sill and understood something I'd been refusing. Desire is not the enemy of honesty. It's the test. And if you tell the truth at every hinge, maybe the rooms you enter will be the ones you're capable of living in. In the morning, I woke to the smell of cinnamon and jazz drifting under my door. It wasn't a promise. It was an option. I brewed coffee and carried 2 mugs into the hall. I didn't knock hard. I didn't need to. The door swung open on a smile already saying my name, and for the first time in a long time, I stepped forward without feeling like I was leaving anything honest behind.